The evening had already begun when Barış Ardak arrived at the quiet venue where an important gathering was taking place. He had expected an ordinary evening. A few familiar faces. A few conversations. A little time away from the busy rhythm of his professional life. He had no idea that someone from his past would soon walk through the same doors. For years, life had taken Barış and Elçin Sangu in different directions. Their careers had continued, their schedules had changed, and the routines that once brought them together had gradually become memories. They had remained connected by the moments they had shared. But time has a strange way of creating distance, even between people who once understood each other effortlessly. Barış stepped inside and greeted several people. He smiled, exchanged a few words, and moved toward a quieter corner of the room. Then he heard a familiar laugh. He stopped. For a second, he wasn't sure. He turned slowly. Elçin was standing near the entrance. She was speaking with someone, smiling naturally, completely unaware that Barış had just noticed her. He watched for a moment. It had been a long time. Yet something about seeing her again felt strangely familiar. Then Elçin turned. Their eyes met. The room seemed quieter for a brief moment. She recognized him immediately. Her expression changed from surprise to a warm smile. Barış smiled back. Neither of them moved right away. Then Elçin excused herself from the conversation and walked toward him. Barış. Elçin. They both laughed softly. It was a simple greeting, but there was emotion behind it. I didn't know you were coming, Elçin said. Neither did I know you were coming. She smiled. Then I guess this is a surprise. A good one. For a moment, they simply stood there. They had both imagined meeting again someday. But imagining something and actually experiencing it were two very different things. Elçin looked at him carefully. You seem well. So do you. Busy? Always. She laughed. Some things never change. Apparently not. The conversation became easier. They started talking about work, recent projects, and the changes life had brought them. They asked questions. They listened. They laughed at old memories. The years between them seemed to become smaller with every passing minute. Eventually, they moved toward a quieter part of the venue. There were fewer people there, and the music was softer. Elçin looked at Barış. Do you remember the last time we had a real conversation? Barış thought about it. I remember. When was it? He smiled. I could tell you, but then you'd realize how long it's been. She laughed. Fair enough. There was a comfortable silence. Elçin looked around the room. Isn't it strange? What? How life can change so much, but one conversation with an old friend can make everything feel familiar again. Barış nodded. Maybe that's what makes certain friendships special. She looked at him. Special? Some people don't need to be around every day to remain important. Elçin smiled. I agree. Those words opened a door to memories they had not discussed in a long time. They remembered early days when their schedules had been exhausting. They remembered long rehearsals. They remembered moments when a simple joke could make a difficult day easier. They remembered conversations that had continued long after everyone else had gone home. The memories came naturally. Neither had to force them. At one point, Elçin laughed so hard that she had to look away. Barış smiled. I remember that laugh. She looked back at him. You still remember? Some things are difficult to forget. Her smile became softer. The words were simple, but they carried meaning. The evening continued around them. People came and went. Conversations filled the room. But Barış and Elçin seemed to have created their own quiet space. They talked about how much they had changed. Elçin admitted that she had become more careful about the people she allowed close to her. Barış said that experience had taught him to appreciate honesty more than appearances. "You learn who really matters," he said. Elçin nodded. "And who stays when nobody is watching?" Barış looked at her. Exactly. There was something sincere about their conversation. Neither was trying to impress the other. Neither was pretending. They were simply speaking honestly. Later, they stepped outside for some fresh air. The city lights were glowing in the distance. The evening was peaceful. Elçin leaned against the railing. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if life had taken a different direction?" Barış looked toward the city. "Sometimes." "Do you think about the past often?" "Not often." He paused. "But I appreciate it." She smiled. "That's different." "It is." "Why?" "Because I don't want to live in the past. But I don't want to forget the people and moments that helped shape me." Elçin nodded slowly. "I like that." They remained quiet for a while. Then Elçin said, "Maybe that's why seeing you again feels different." Barış looked at her. "Different how?" "It doesn't feel like we're trying to go back." She smiled. "It feels like we're meeting as the people we've become." Barış smiled. "That's probably true." The thought stayed with them. They were no longer the same two people they had once been. They had grown. They had learned. They had experienced success and uncertainty. And yet, when they stood together, the old understanding was still there. Not exactly the same. Something deeper. Something more mature. When they returned inside, the evening was nearly over. Barış checked the time. "It's getting late." Elçin nodded. "Unfortunately." He smiled. "We should do this again." She looked at him. "Actually talk?" "Exactly." She laughed. "I'd like that." There was no hesitation in her answer. Before leaving, they exchanged one final look. Neither said anything dramatic. They didn't need to. The reunion itself had already said enough. They had crossed paths again after years of separate journeys. And in those few hours, they discovered that some connections do not disappear when life changes. They simply wait. Wait for another conversation. Another smile. Another moment when two people realize that, despite everything that has happened, they still understand each other. As Barış walked away, he looked back once. Elçin was still standing near the entrance. Their eyes met again. She smiled. He smiled back. Then they went their separate ways. But this time, the distance felt different. It no longer felt like an ending. It felt like the beginning of another chapter. Because sometimes, two hearts do not cross paths only once. Sometimes life gives them another chance to meet. And when they do, they may discover that what once felt like a beautiful memory can become the beginning of something new. The next morning, Barış woke up with the previous evening still on his mind. He had attended the gathering expecting nothing unusual. He certainly had not expected to see Elçin again after so much time. Yet now, their conversation seemed to replay itself in his thoughts. Her smile. Her laughter. The way they had spoken as if the years between them had simply disappeared. He wondered if she had felt the same. Across the city, Elçin was thinking about the evening too. She had expected the reunion to be pleasant, perhaps a little nostalgic.
Instead, it had felt surprisingly natural. There had been no need to explain the past or pretend that nothing had changed. They had simply met again as two people who had grown in different directions but still understood something familiar in each other.
Later that morning, Elçin received a message. It was from Barış. Good morning. I hope you had a good evening. She smiled when she read it. After a moment, she replied. Good morning. I did. It was better than I expected. A few seconds later, another message appeared. Same. That small exchange made her smile again. It was not a grand gesture. It was simply a reminder that their conversation had not ended when they left the venue. They were continuing it. A few days later, their schedules brought them together again. This time, there was no large gathering and no crowd around them. They met in a quiet cafe where they could talk without interruption. When Barış arrived, Elçin was already there. You are late, she said with a playful smile. He looked at the clock. 2 minutes. Still late. I thought you were going to say 5. I considered it. They laughed. The atmosphere was immediately comfortable. They ordered their drinks and began talking. At first, the conversation was simple. Work. Travel. Projects. Daily life. Then the discussion slowly became more personal. Elçin looked at Barış. Do you think people change? Definitely. Even when they don't realize it? Especially then. She smiled. That's interesting. Barış continued. Sometimes you only understand how much you've changed when you meet someone who knew you years ago. Elçin became quiet. Maybe that's why yesterday felt so strange. Because we saw the difference? Yes. She looked at him. But we also saw what stayed the same. Barış nodded. Their conversation continued for hours. They spoke about dreams they once had and goals they now wanted to pursue. Some dreams had changed. Others had become stronger. They talked about how difficult it could be to maintain balance when professional life demanded so much attention. Elçin admitted that she had learned to value peaceful moments more than exciting ones. Barış agreed. Peace becomes more valuable as you get older. She smiled. I never understood that before. Neither did I. They laughed. The cafe slowly became quieter. People began leaving. But neither seemed ready to end the conversation. Eventually, Elçin asked a question. Do you think people can reconnect after years apart? Barış didn't answer immediately. He looked at her. I think they can. Why? Because if the connection was genuine, time doesn't necessarily erase it. She smiled. That's what I wanted to hear. There was something almost reassuring about the conversation. Neither of them was trying to define their relationship. They were simply discovering that their friendship could exist in a new form. As they left the cafe, they walked together for a while. The streets were calm. Elçin looked toward Barış. You know what I like about today? What? We aren't talking about the past as if we belong there. Barış smiled. We're talking about it as something that brought us here. She nodded. Exactly. They continued walking. At a quiet intersection, they stopped. Elçin looked at him. Thank you for asking me to meet. Barış smiled. Thank you for coming. She laughed. You made it sound like a formal meeting. Maybe it was. Then where's the official agenda? Barış laughed. There wasn't one. Good. They both smiled. The moment was light and simple. But it carried a deeper meaning. They were no longer wondering whether they could reconnect. They already had. The question now was what they would do with that renewed connection. Over the following weeks, they began seeing each other occasionally. Sometimes they met for coffee. Sometimes they spoke briefly between busy schedules. Sometimes they simply exchanged messages. There was no pressure. Their connection developed naturally. One afternoon, Boris had an especially difficult day. His schedule had been exhausting, and he felt mentally drained. He received a message from Elçin. "Everything okay?" He smiled. "Long day." Her reply came quickly. "Then take a break." He wrote back. "Trying." She answered. "Sometimes you don't need to solve everything. Just give yourself a quiet moment." He read the message twice. It was exactly what he needed to hear. He replied with a simple "Thank you." A few days later, Elçin had her own difficult moment. She was uncertain about an important professional decision. She called Boris. "I need your opinion." "Tell me." She explained the situation. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, he said, "You already know what you want. You're just afraid of choosing it." There was silence. Then she laughed softly. "How did you know?" "Because I've been there." His words gave her confidence. She thanked him. They ended the call. Neither realized how important those small moments had become. Their relationship was no longer simply about remembering the past. They were becoming part of each other's present again. And that was something neither had expected. One evening, they met at a quiet place overlooking the city. The lights stretched across the horizon. Elçin stood beside Boris. "Do you remember what you said the first night we met again?" "What?" "That some connections are worth protecting." Boris smiled. "I remember." She looked at him. "I think you were right." He turned toward her. "About what?" "About certain connections." She smiled. "Some people are worth making time for." Boris didn't immediately respond. Instead, he smiled. "I think so too." The city continued moving around them. Cars passed. Lights changed. People came and went. But for a few minutes, everything felt still. They had no idea where this renewed connection would lead. They did not need to know. For now, they were simply grateful that life had allowed their paths to cross again. Two hearts had crossed once more. Not because the past demanded it. Not because either of